Hello and welcome to the 2025 edition of the Sport for Business, Sport for Social Good event. It's in partnership with our friends at Allianz, and today we are going to be talking to people who are making a real difference using the language of sport to present ways in which people can get involved within their communities and to live better lives. We will be talking with Paralympics Ireland, with Karen Coventry, the new CEO of Special Olympics Ireland, with Brian Crook, who has established his own social enterprise, and with Colin Sharkey and Shane McCardle, representing the local sports partnership network that does so much good work in reaching out to people who might otherwise be left behind off the sporting bandwagon. I'm delighted that you've taken the time to be here with us today. This is a recorded session which was recorded at Shelbourne Park Stadium in Ringsend, courtesy of Greyhound Racing Ireland, and we are delighted to present to you now these conversations as part of our reach out to sport for social good. So delighted to be joined now as our first guest and the Sport for Social Good event this year by Karen Coventry, who was newly appointed as the CEO of Special Olympics Ireland. Karen, you're very welcome into the hot seat.
Thank you very much, Rob. Great to be here.
Now, your appointment came after you beat off quite a substantial level of competition from the outside world, but you've been part of the Special Olympics family for a number of years now. Tell us a little bit about your own journey through the organisation, and then what was the kind of the driver that made you think, yes, I want to step up into the big seat now?
Yeah, it'll be 23 years this Thursday that I've been with Special Olympics Ireland, which is quite incredible. Came home from travelling Australia like the rest of the nation at that stage and saw an ad in the paper, the actual newspaper, that said National Sports Administrator to support Team Ireland for the World Summer Games. And I had a friend who had a brother with intellectual disability that I hung out with for my whole life, and I said, oh, I'll give that a go. So went through the World Games, had the most roller coaster of a year, got absolutely bitten by the bug. We had a delegation of 653. It's just a brilliant, brilliant year. And then after that, contract finished in December and got kept on. And then the Eastern region set up in 2004, which is all the Dublin area. Went from there, and then in 2018, when Francis Kavanagh retired, I was lucky enough to be appointed into Director of Sport. So that's for the last 7.5 years. And then when Matt announced his retirement, I feel like I'm climbing up the ladder. It was more the passion and drive, and I absolutely love the organisation. I think we've just worked so hard as a collective to give the athletes as much as we can. And I just wanted to continue with that and work with a brilliant team of staff that we have to keep going.
You mentioned there about the fact that you knew somebody with an intellectual disability, and that is a theme that many of us. I have a niece as well who's the same, and I think that definitely colours and prompts your taking a greater level of interest in it. But tell me a little bit about what Special Olympics does for the athletes who they're not born as athletes and they face many challenges in their life, sport and physical activity being one of them. Why is it so important that we get that sport side of it right?
I think sport is like a community and a belonging, and the athletes absolutely love being part of something, as do their wider families. So a lot of families, when they start off, it's the first time they've met families in the same situation, and the athletes just get to be themselves in that safe space. I think having the athletes from a young age, we have very young athletes from age of 4, and it teaches them the fundamental movement skills, and it gives them the confidence and competence to have that lifelong physical activity in sport. And that's what we hope. We hope that they'll stay strong and stay with our pathway the whole way through. Our athletes start at 4. We have one athlete who's 87. I mean, there's not much other national governing bodies who have that full breadth, and we've 15 sports. And that's the difference with Special Olympics. While we have 6,500 athletes within our programme, it's actually 10,500 because the athletes do multiple sports within our one national governing body.
Okay, and as a proportion of the population of those with an intellectual disability, how many have reached out? So we know the broad general figures of the number of people that will participate in some form of sport, physical activity, then the number of people that are members of their GAA club and their rugby club. So what's the proportion of those with the intellectual disability that are actually sort of part of a club with Special Olympics?
Yeah, there's about 60,000 in the country, and we've probably I just think we just need to keep growing and growing and opening that out. I think other sports now have opened their doors, which is increasing the reach for our people with intellectual disabilities. But there's so much more to go, Rob. I mean, we want to be able to give every athlete an opportunity, whether it's with Special Olympics or another national governing body, to increase the numbers across the spectrum.
Yeah. I've had the good fortune to be there wearing my media hat on the homecoming from a number of the different World Games. And I honestly don't think I've ever been part of such an emotional gathering at Dublin Airport when the family get to meet the athletes back again for the first time, those that weren't able to travel, and the broad general public weighing in with their support as well. I've also had then the real privilege of actually travelling to a game. So I was at the Ireland Winter Games and then the World Winter Games over in Turin, wearing my board hat with Special Olympics Ireland. There is something incredibly special about seeing the impact that it has. Now you're living with it, you're working in it day in, day out over 23 years. Is there a way that you can summarise that impact, that importance as to what it is?
Yeah, I think with the family, and I'll just an example of Donald from the World Winter Games, who'd been very quiet and shy and never really initiated a conversation. And his parents, when we came home and said, Karen, what have you done to him? He came in and he did an interview at RTE. He now would say, hello, Karen, how are you? And have a full-blown conversation. So the change of that athlete in his own family life and his life in general has been immense. And I've seen that time and time again. I think that is the magic of Special Olympics. And people say, oh, you know, the national games are coming up, the Ireland Games. They've never been away before. They'll only eat spaghetti bolognese. And I'm like, give them to me for a weekend. And they come home absolutely changed people. They're so much more independent. And I think that's what every family, every member wants for their family, is to be independent and to show a whole nother side and give the athletes that platform. And my God, did they rise. And I mean, you've seen those athletes. It is quite spectacular.
Yeah, it is very much. And the whole community part of it and coming together from a world which can otherwise be quite isolated. But in the midst of your period of time as the director of sport, we had the the broken system that COVID did for us as well. How much of an impact was that when we couldn't come together? How much more of an impact was it on those who perhaps needed that coming together a little bit more than many of us?
Yeah, honestly, it was devastating. That was their whole lives were just totally closed in. There was no outlet for them. There was no outlet for the family. There was no outlet for the athlete. We would have reached out by surveys during that time. And the key thing, Rob, and it actually broke my heart, was the athletes were saying, we're lonely and we miss our friends. So that, that was the impact of it. And I guess as an organisation, we said, okay, what can we do? So, we posted out something to the whole 6,000 athletes to try and keep them engaged. Did a lot of online activities and competitions to try and open it out. But reading that quite starkly now, it was absolutely devastating. And they were the last group of people to come back because everybody was so nervous of coming back. And again, with Special Olympics, the volunteers often can be of an older generation because, again, that scale. So they also were more nervous coming back. So it did take an awful long time for those athletes to come back in. And we're delighted now they are back. We've had our first qualifying for the Ireland Summer Games next year, and it'll be the first Games since 2018. So there's huge hype. And you're right, in every local community, there'll be somebody who's been selected, and that we're hoping that everybody just rallies around them and get that good feeling back in the country again. The whole 2003, when everyone came together, that's what I'd love to see for next year, is that volunteers come out and go and support.
That was, for many, that hosting of the World Games was the first time that Special Olympics as such had come on to many people's radars. And driving around the country, there are still towns and villages in Ireland where you still see the sign that, Ballyjamesduff, host town for the Ghanaian delegation, or whatever that might have been. That sort of like that long tail which those games had, and we remember Muhammad Ali and Croke Park, and there were so many memorable elements out of it. Is that something which really resonated at a global level as well? Like, does Ireland punch way above our weight when it comes to the World Games?
Yeah, I think we're tiny but mighty. Every time I travel away, people will always say the games in Dublin were the best games. And that still stands. He was away in Brussels 2 weeks ago, and again, European countries coming up and saying, oh, the Dublin Games, they were the best games. But it was the Irish people that were the best of that. They were the community that got in behind people. It was the warm Irish welcome, the Céad Míle Fáilte, and that was felt worldwide. And Tim Shriver would still say, when are you bringing it back? It was just such an incredible space. But it's the Irish people that bring that.
Okay. I'll wait until you're a couple of months longer into the tenure before we ask that question about when will we bring the World Games back. But the The organisation. So we're structured in many ways the same as a sport, so that it's based on clubs. The clubs run themselves. They provide their coaching, they provide their facilities, and they bring the athletes in, and the best of them will be the best. That's a natural thing. What does Special Olympics Ireland do as an organisation that sits on top of that? How do you enable the individuals and the individual clubs to be as good as they can be?
Yeah, good strong governance within the clubs. So our teams, as you say, they're set out. We've got development officers for clubs who would help with all the governance structures. We have a health and wellbeing programme, which again is quite different. And it's health education. We do breast cancer awareness. We do special smiles, opening eyes, healthy hearing. So we do a lot of education and screening programmes for our athletes. We also run an athlete leadership programme. So it's teaching athletes how to public speak. And then we send them out into businesses. You would have met Margaret Turley, who's on that programme, who's now a Sergeant Driver Global Messenger. So again, it's given the athletes the skills to be out in their society. And then we have the sports programme as well with our 15 sports. So that really is just the broader reach of what Special Olympics does. It's not just a sports programme, it's the vehicle that we use to make the magic.
Yeah. And well funded out of Sport Ireland. I think of all of the national governing bodies, I think Special Olympics is the one that gets the highest level of core funding. But you're attractive towards commercial partners as well. So the likes of Air Lingus, Gala. Only this week has been announced that Stena Line are coming on board as sponsors as well. Sports director involved. I think, having heard from Margaret at an event that we ran on Sport for Business, what is it about the organisation that is attractive in that sort of wider sense, that sort of appeal to the heart as well as the head, but obviously the difference that you make in people's lives?
I think that's exactly it. It's a difference, and it's the local community. Those companies who come on board have values of community, and I think that's what Special Olympics brings as well, is that value into community. And you get to see the change that you make in people's lives, and it's not just the athletes, it's their families, it's the volunteers. There's that whole community piece, and I think that's what makes, it's the connections and connecting people. All of our new partnerships it's communities and connections, and that's what Special Olympics does. It connects communities and people across the globe.
And you hang on to them as well. I think Air have been with you now for, is it 40 years that they're celebrating this year?
Absolutely.
So that's pretty good. There's the National Collection Day, and there's lots of different fundraising. So, but you're a charity, a registered charity, as well as a national governing body in sport. Is that a comfortable fit? Because it's unusual.
It's a challenge for sure. While we might be the highest, like one of the highest for core funding, we don't get high performance funding. So that would kind of spin that part of it. So the charity is a challenge, and the organisation has quite a lot of staff to run the programmes. We run them out of 5 different regions to try and give the athletes competition on different events. So we would have ran 100 competition and event days between January and June. So it's the funding to do that is what kind of keeps it going. But it's a big engine, but we know we have a big impact. We would love to offer more corporates to come on board and see the magic of Special Olympics. All of the staff that come on from those corporates absolutely love it, and they say, come out and do an event day with us, come and see it, come again to the Ireland Games next year, come and see the magic. No ask, just come, because once you come in 23 years later, you don't come back out.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a couple of times now the National Games are taking place in 2026, and they'll be focused in Dublin. First time that we've run them, because obviously COVID kind of crashed in the middle of this. So it's the first time since 2018. What level of organisation is already gone into making sure that they happen? Yeah,
it's phenomenal. Again, 12 sports that are running, plus a young athletes programme and a health screenings and other activities. So all the venues. So the first thing is getting the beds for 1,800 people. So that is the first challenge, to have them housed. So all the delegations come to Dublin on the 18th of June. And then we'll have the opening ceremony out in Tallaght Stadium, who've been hugely supportive. The county councils have been phenomenal to date, and we look forward to further engagement with them. Mm-hmm. Then all of the sports venues kick off from Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And then we've got to feed 1,800 people Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We've got to transport them Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay. So there's a lot of moving parts. Volunteers, we're looking between 2,500 and 3,000 volunteers. So please get your volunteer hat back on. And it'd be great to have you out. And again, it's going to be the biggest inclusive event of the year next year. And that's the real push. Whether you're into sport or not, come and be part of Special Olympics. Come and be part of the biggest inclusive event. It'll just be phenomenal.
Yeah. So of the 1,800 that you're bringing together, that'll be coaches and
management,
carers and families and management and that. How many athletes are going to be taking part?
1,300.
1,300.
Yeah.
Okay. And they've been selected?
Yes.
So they go through a selection process. Competitive?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very competitive.
Very competitive. So the qualification period started from last September and then finished up in June across the 12 sports. And selections have just taken place in September across each of the 5 regions. And the athletes have all got their letters of offer. And there's huge excitement in the local community to support the athletes that are coming. And what's nice in one way is that we haven't had a game since 2018. So a huge amount of new family members coming in for the first time. So it'll be their very first experience of a Special Olympics Games. And coming to Dublin, we'll have a lot of stuff on campus. So on the campus itself, we'll have swimming in the aquatic centre, we'll have football, we'll have gymnastics, we'll have bocce, we'll have the Young Athletes programme, we'll have motor activities, which is for severe to profound athletes. That's always a really magical piece. So that's the Friday. And we'll also have the Healthy Athletes Village and screening all in the indoor arena. So that'd be a really great hub to come and see if people are wandering around. And then the outlying venues. So we'll have our golf out in Westmanstown and their rowing in the Garda Club. So again, using our links with the guards have been super. So yeah, and our equine therapy up in Stewart's and Kilcloon should be absolutely beautiful.
Okay. And then there's basketball
in Gormanstown
as well, and I think
badminton's in Baldoyle.
So there are plenty of opportunities to get out. And as is it a spectator event? Like will there be tickets? Will there be tickets that will go on sale for people to actually come out? Or
there are no tickets, you just rock up and come and support it. So any of the venues that are there'll be plenty of seating for as many viewers as possible to come and see.
Okay.
It'd be brilliant.
Which begs the question really as to the sort of the biggest challenge that you're going to face in your new role. That's it. Like organising an event.
The quick one. Yeah, that's the first thing off the bat, and is making sure the games are really successful. However, I also want to make sure that the athletes who are not selected for the games have a programme to work this year. So that is the key priority. While there's 1,300 athletes there for games, there's still another over 5,000 athletes who don't have games. So we really want to ensure there's a sports programme that's still running on side of that. And our young athletes is running, our health screenings are working, and our athlete leadership. So it's a 2 kind of pronged approach. While the games are phenomenally and amazing, we still have a lot of athletes that we want to ensure have competition next year too.
Okay. And I'm guessing that Margaret Turley and the other stars that have been operating on a global scale for the last year or two, that they'll all be around and giving a dig out as well.
She was selected.
She's been selected
for basketball. Yeah.
Okay.
So she's absolutely thrilled. So even this year, what we're going to do is have our athlete leaders do a lot of roles at games. So we're going to increase the amount of athlete leaders that come and help and volunteer. And we're going to utilise a lot into guest services. So again, anyone who's coming, any of our new corporates or sponsors can get hands-on to meet our athletes and see the magic. So we'll have our athletes doing table officials in basketball. There's plenty of roles that they can do. You've seen them now. They're well capable. And we want to utilise them as much as possible for the game. So it's huge involvement across the board.
Okay. And the ability to volunteer, the channels for that will be open
after Christmas. So we're just working on systems at the moment. So all general release will go in January. So we're working on a microsite at the moment, which will have a holding page. And we're really looking forward to getting that going.
Okay. We'll look forward to giving that a big push in the new year as well. I can't let you go without saying a word of tribute to your predecessor as well. So Matt English, he was there for the best part of 2 decades in the role, having taken over from Mary Davis as well. He had become very much the kind of the face and the personality of the organisation, and I'm sure he won't be a stranger. I'm sure he'll be knocking around at the national games as well. What was he like to work with? Because you were part of his senior team as well.
Yeah, he's amazing. A brilliant mentor. Just the most liked CEO I think that's ever gone. No one's ever had a bad word to say about him. You always meet him with a smile. The families, the athletes, I think most importantly, absolutely love him. When you walk into a room, he's just surrounded. But for me, he's just been a great mentor, and he's worked our whole team just gels so well together. And yeah, totally miss him in around the office. It does still feel quite strange. I just rang him on Saturday, just kind of checking in. But look, he's phenomenal. He's well due a rest. He's worked so hard, and the golf clubs are getting a good outing.
Okay.
But, look, he's phenomenal.
Good. So he set a bar, and that's what your ambition now is, to be the same person that people will say that about maybe in 2 decades' time. Who knows? At the moment, though, we'll just look as far as June of 2026. So the game is taking place, starting off on the 18th of June. Put it in your diaries now. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today, and indeed for everything that both you and the organisation do. Karen Coventry, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Now, for the next element of our Sport for Social Good, we're reaching into the world of Paralympics Ireland, and not at the level of the gold medals that we have been consistently winning in Paris 2024, looking forward to LA 28, but we're bringing it back. So where do the athletes come from that will be going on to those great heights and competing for Ireland in national games? Well, I'm delighted to be joined by three members of the team from Paralympics Ireland, by Neasa and Brian and Cliona, to talk about the pathways that bring athletes from a first curious glance, at maybe that could be for me, all the way through to the games and the representation for Ireland. So Cliona, first of all, for you, program manager of the Allianz-backed Next Gen program. And that's where you're reaching out to those, they might not even see themselves as athletes at this moment in time, but they do know that they have an impairment, they have a disability, and your ask of them is to come and have a look, see where the sport can be a part of their new life.
Yeah. So the Allianz Next Gen event, it acts as a vehicle or an opportunity for people with disabilities to just come and try out a multitude of sports. It is a national event. So at the event we have like a number of sports. So you can come in, you can talk to coaches, talk to some Paralympians, aspiring athletes, or just try out something new, even if you're not sure. So it's for people with disabilities themselves, but not just the athletes. It's also for anyone with a vested interest or an interest in para sport. Parents meet other parents, coaches meet other coaches, siblings. It's a way to create awareness of the opportunities.
And like we spoke to Karen Coventry earlier on this morning about the importance of sport as a community, and that's very much a part of this as well. What age groups are you looking to attract to actually come in here? Is this for kids or for teenagers, or is it for anybody who's interested?
Anybody really. We loosely say 10 upwards and could come and try. But also I think, parasport is kind of unique in that, like, it's not always at your doorstep. So I would really encourage, if people are able to attend, grab the opportunity and attend. Even if you're young, you can bring your child along and they can see what the possibilities are. They can talk to other people. We have had scenarios actually, most recently last year, at a Next Gen event. We had a young girl who came, and she was at a previous event when she was very young, I think 7 or 8, and she met Ellen Keane. Okay. And Ellen Keane gave her a t-shirt and signed it and everything. So she came to the event and she actually tried out some athletics this time, even though she is a keen swimmer. And she did meet her hero a few years previous.
Oh, class. Be careful of the things that we do, the seeds that we drop, because they will come back to us. That's brilliant. And like most of the athletes that will be coming forward now, as you say, they're 10 years and upwards, but most of them will have grown up in a period where the transition came from para athletes being unknown towards the situation we have now, where we have the likes of Ellen Keane, the likes of Katie George Dunleavy, the likes of Orla Comerford, the likes of Jason Smith that sort of led the way, and Michael McKillop as well. All of a sudden now, we've got these role models that are out there as being elite athletes competing on a global stage, but who look like them. How important has that been?
Yeah, extremely important. I mean, and you never know what something can turn into. And we've had that instance in Allianz Next Gen events. A really good example of that actually is, you may know one of our Paralympic athletes, Tiernan O'Donnell. Yeah. He came a few years back as a wheelchair basketball player, and he was that kind of an athlete, very content with playing on his local team. And he came to a Next Gen event, not necessarily having any expectations, or, you know, he was just looking to try out whatever he could. And he kind of fell into rowing, met Katie O'Brien, and as you know, he competed for Ireland in para rowing in Paris. So for him, Next Gen served as that transition from one sport to another. So he maybe would have arrived at the door with maybe one thought or one expectation, and lo and behold, it turned into something bigger and something even more successful.
Now, he told me at an event that we did down in Limerick that the reason why he got into the boat with Katie is because he was following her on Instagram and he thought that she was a really good looking girl, and so he, quote, slid into her DMs, and then all of a sudden a Paralympic partnership was born. And it was one of the best pieces of content, the emotion when they got off the boat, got out of the boat, and they were gathered up with their friends and family over in Paris as well. It was brilliant. And so he came through that next gen side of things. I want to bring you in here, Brian, now, because that's a neat transition to what you're doing. So are you kind of the guy that's going around with the clipboard at the Allianz Next Gen event, and you're spotting talent, or you're spotting the potential for talent? What's the next stage then? Because a come and try event is great in terms of opening people's horizons, opening people's imaginations to what's possible. But then it's a long pathway towards representing Ireland at a Paralympic Games.
Yeah, so like originally we had started off doing some physical testing at the Next Gen events, but it has since evolved to be much more about signposting, much more about creating a positive experience and what opportunities are available to athletes in their local area. So we've kind of stepped back from the clipboard, stepped back from the physical testing, and Kieran was actually in his sports chair, and him and Con Callahan were doing sprints, and the competitive nature of it was brilliant. Yeah. But as in we've kind of gone back to how do we connect people and what sports are available in their local area. So as in my role then as a pathway lead is then how do we support the person as well as the performer as they progress through the different stages of their career. And as Cliona touched on, the Paralympic journey or Paralympic progressions can look very different to Olympic sport. In the sense of some people may move through the system faster if they come into a sport. Tiernan is a prime example. Some people may go through it in a very linear fashion or non-linear fashion. So it's then as an organisation, how do we best support them as people, as humans? And we've over the last year developed 2 programs. One is an online development program that looks at people who are competing nationally within Ireland, looking to progress onto the international stage. And that's an online program where we've got 6 online sessions delivered by practitioners from the Sport Ireland Institute. So it's introduction to psychology, which we have tomorrow night. We have performance lifestyle skills. We have understanding, training, load and recovery. So it's a really holistic approach to athlete development and giving them connections to the wider sports system, as in other athletes from other sports. We normally have about 30 para athletes from 12 different para sports on a Wednesday night, and it's really good. And then we have the next phase is what we have is the Aspire program, which is an in-person program where we come together 3 times a year for a weekend. And that very much is like human development. So we partnered with a True Athlete project, and we ran our first session was on like self-awareness. So understanding themselves as people, what are their values? How did they show up? How does that look in their home life and their performance environment? So really starting that journey with themselves. And then we've moved into areas of like media training, sponsorship, personal branding, all things that are really, I guess, contemporary and relevant to a modern athlete, and making sure that they've been exposed or introduced to different aspects on that athletic journey. So when they potentially arrive at a Paralympic Games, a European Games, a World Championship, they feel really prepared.
And it's kind of like almost polishing a diamond, because you can't necessarily make somebody a star if they don't have something within them. But I think Paralympics Ireland has been either fortunate or very clever at actually highlighting. So the likes of Ellen Keane, the likes of Roisin Ryan, the likes of Orla Comerford in particular, they absolutely shine when the camera turns onto them as well. So apart from being world-class athletes, which is of course really important because these are elite athletes. This is not a charitable foundation which is giving an opportunity to people who might otherwise not have it to compete. I mean, these are games which are taking place at the very highest level. Like that combination, that correlation between the athlete and the person, that's not necessarily something that comes in at the next gen level, but it's something which you obviously transition into afterwards. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think we have a really big focus on the person, the athlete voice, the athlete experience, and how we can support them as human beings, and then allowing them to perform on a world stage. And the programs that we're running is very much, I think, like a tools in a toolbox. So how do we give athletes access to more tools? They can decide, okay, that's a really useful tool for me, and I'm going to add that in. I'm going to use that. Whereas I seen that's really good information, but that's not for me. In the first weekend, we ran a mindfulness session with them. And I could see that some athletes were like, oh, this is so powerful. And other athletes were like, I just can't get into this.
Yeah.
But I was exposing them to different aspects of performance or things that support them perform or support them in their daily environment. And if we can give them more opportunities to engage in that, then they can take that into their sport, into their world, and apply it to, I guess, be the best person and best performer.
There is always a fear, and I think it was expressed at the time when Jason and Michael in particular were winning, kind of double gold medals and going from one Olympic Games to the Paralympic Games to the next, and then from one World Championships to the next, that maybe this was a golden generation, but it looks very much as though you're building a succession of golden generations, which is, I guess, the job of Paralympics Ireland. Neasa Russell, you were chef de mission out in Paris 2024, and your new role in the organisation now is as Chief Operating Officer, but you're also looking at that bigger picture, the holistic side of the athlete and the person, putting in place all of the programs that are there. What did you learn from being so deeply embedded and involved in the games process, which has actually sort of shaped your view as to how the organisation should be going forward now?
Yeah, really good question. I think for me, I remember thinking, why are we doing this? What is the purpose and point of a Paralympic Games and stuff? Because actually, when you're leading the team through a really intense event and people's careers and livelihoods, are there, it's just such an enormous platform. And I think actually what I probably realised, and I'm glad to say I'm not the only one who has realised about this, our role as an MPC, and through extensive consultation as we've been developing our new strategy, some really strong themes came through. And hence then, so one of the things that I realised really was there's probably three elements that we have to consider when we're working as a National Paralympic Committee. Firstly, one, the individual. So again, this is kind of how we hang all the work together, really. And I suppose we're looking, as an MPC, we're not just looking at those about to attend these games. We're looking at who's the next generation coming through, and more to the point, how do we make sure we're creating the opportunities or helping do that? So I suppose there's the impact on the individual themselves. So are we creating the right performance environment for them at the game? So in LA 28, we'll be heading out again there in another month to actually make sure that we have the right environment, because as you suggest, the nature of the games, Paralympic Games, has massively moved on in terms of standards and profile. It's professional. It's a very serious and fun professional event, and the standards are there that the athletes are going to have to be doing it. So we're looking at where can we intervene, where can we work with the governing bodies to make sure that their programs are better supporting the athletes through. And again, that's a lot of the work that we will do. So there's the impact on the individual. Then there's the impact on the role models, exactly as you allude to. So we know that is, you can't see, it can't be it. It's hugely impactful. And we can see again, what we try to do then is create entry points or gateways or signposting for people to come into para sport. Unlike Olympic sport or a lot of the other professional sport, it isn't just down the road. If you're a person with a disability, we know some of the biggest barriers getting into sport are transport, travel, and your actual capacity to get there yourself. So you have to rely on family members, you have to rely on a wider interest. So what we're trying to do, and again, it's early days through the work that's Cliona doing and Brian's done over the last while, is figure out how do we create those signposting events, those vehicles for bringing people in. And that's really to serve the disability community, and so that people who are interested in sport can come in, see what's available in their local area. And there's not just a performance angle to that, like that's just being a good citizen in terms of what we're doing as well. So, and that's really important that we have the role models from the platform of the games coming to support and encourage younger people and older people to come into sport. And then the third element, again, I think I was really struck from me from being at an event like that where there's 168 different nations. You're walking around the village. It's one of the most profound human experiences I've had ever in my life to mind sport. But you realise there's a huge global movement sitting behind this. And like sport is the vehicle for trying to make the world more inclusive. And the Paralympic movement itself, it's something that's really inspired me the more I've worked in it. So I suppose in one sense I came from a high performance background to para sport to work in high performance and human performance. But actually it's the whole angle of human rights and fairness that has really struck me about the Paralympic movement. And actually what we know is that we have, as an NPC, a National Paralympic Committee, we have a real responsibility to make sure we have the platform that actually can change people's minds and perceptions about people with disability. And that's really, and I think as we're going forward in our new strategy, definitely what is striking me about the feedback we've had and the direction that our board are taking as well is that we're building on the legacy of our work about going to Paralympic Games. So we're really trying to lean now into our responsibility, if you like, as a social innovation organisation to really kind of stretch out what it means and what it means to use sport as that vehicle for social good, for a change in perceptions of people in society. So we have more people with disability in the workforce, in education, and in sport, really.
And it is perfect for that. It is sport for social good. It's the language that people understand. It is a very heavy responsibility to bear as well. So you mentioned there about working with sporting bodies, but also with disability services. So that sense of collaboration, is that something which is continually developing, continually evolving, so that you can't necessarily bear that responsibility alone?
Well, I would agree. I mean, we're not a disability service provider per se, but I do think we can provide the leadership, and it comes back to your point again around the role models. Like, it struck me again, having worked across high performance sport, Olympic, Paralympic for many, many years. Actually, it's actually the athletes themselves that I think they recognise and have a much higher sense of awareness of their role modelling, and it's really interesting to see all our high profile athletes give back in some way or attend or encourage to bring more people with disability. And we often hear their own stories of the barriers they've had to overcome. And it's exactly, that's what we can showcase. We can bring the narrative, the storytelling, but we do have to roll up our sleeves and work with our national governing bodies. We need to link out to the local sports partnership with our sibling disability sports organisations as well in terms of that collaboration piece. And I think, again, one of the strongest voices in this is the athlete. And again, where our direction of travel is very much now trying to really lean into that athlete voice. What's important to our athlete community that we can amplify and that we can bring to the table and bring to different stakeholders and different partners, so that we can, again, really push out what's important to the disability community.
And that direction of travel is inexorably forward as well. So even from London to Rio, there was a 4-year gap in which there didn't seem to be much visibility around para sport. Whereas now, even just in the last few weeks alone, we've seen Ola Comerford winning gold. We've seen Greta Stremacite winning gold in the athletics. And then we've seen Roisin and Dervla both winning medals in the para swimming out in Singapore. These are global events that Ireland is really sort of pushing on the world stage. If I can come back to you, Cliona, like those elements when we can sort of reach out and tell the story of those, do they feature as part of Next Gen events? So when people walk into the room, are they assailed with videos and pictures of celebration and making them think, actually, I'd love to be there?
Yes, absolutely. At our bigger Next Gen national events, we have like Q&A segments. We would have Paralympians present and videos and pictures from the previous sporting year all around. And like I like to use the Next Gen as a kind of catalyst for change, even in perception. Coming through those doors, we will have the next Paralympians come through those doors. We may not, but we may, none of us know exactly where like your journey is going to go once you walk through those doors. So I would say, like, for someone coming through those doors, yes, you may meet your hero, but like the sky's the limit. You never know. I would like to try and bring parasport from a minority, for people participating in their community to being like a priority. These events are so important because they're so powerful. They can literally change somebody's life. Because we have people who walk through those doors who have never even seen parasport. Like they don't know that there's such a thing as wheelchair basketball or tandem cycling. Like they've never seen a tandem bike. But you will have people who've maybe tried it before in school or seen it on television, like you say, or seen it in pictures. Or so you never know what a person's experience is coming in the door, and you never know what their what their capacity is when they come through the door. They will be the next Paralympian, some of them, and some of them will just, their awareness will grow, and they could be the next educator, the next parent, the next coach.
Because it does take a village to raise a child, and it does take a whole ecosystem to bring a para-athlete to the pinnacle of what they do. You mentioned there about how they might have seen something, but of course they might have heard it as well, because we had in Paris, I think every medalist in the Paris Paralympic Games was visually impaired, as well as being female. So they're narrowing the funnel there a little bit. But that is important as well, is to understand this is more challenging. This is more difficult than your regular sport, which can just, I'm not going to say that they can just turn up and lay out the bibs and the cones. There's a lot more awareness, I guess, that goes into the delivery of para sport as well. Is there a challenge in terms of finding the right number of people that you can actually sort of bring people together? Or are we moving into a phase where para and able-bodied sport are actually coexisting alongside each other? I love the National Athletics Championships, where Orla Comerford was racing against Sarah Lavin, and on the same track and the same time. Is that something which, the more visible we become in parasport, the more that's likely to be another pathway through, Brian?
I think so. I think, like, as in, what my thought on this, that they have to coexist, and they have to be integrated at times, but also sit separately at times, because I think they provide two different things for people. And it was actually off the back of one of the Next Gens, and a girl who came along who had got into swimming then, and it was coming up to Christmas, and I'll always remember it. Her mum rang me, it must have been 16th of December, and she was like, I just wanted to, I don't know how she even got my phone number, but she rang me and she was like, I just wanted to let you know that it's been so transformative for my daughter, that she's gone from never thinking that she could be part of an able-bodied swim club now to training regularly and then racing against Nicole Turner or Ellen Keane at a national competition in the indoor arena. And I'd asked her, is that something that she wanted from it? And she was like, well, like, she just never considered being able to do both, to be part of an able-bodied club and compete in para, and that both sides were equally important. So I think they have to coexist, and it's working together. It's the collaboration piece that it comes back to, is how do we create high quality opportunities for everybody?
You can never chase a dream until you have a dream. You have to have a basic understanding of, okay, so what is it? And that's what you're giving in that space of it. In terms, Neasa, of then where do we go next? So LA is literally, it's just around the corner. Frightening though that may be to consider, but this is about more than just those tentpole games. It is about sort of reaching out. Is there a target in the new strategic plan, which I know is going to be published in the coming months, as to, can we measure that? You've mentioned about how important it is that we are more than sport. Are there measurements in there that are going to be there so that we can all pull together to say, okay, I'll take that little bit, I'll build that step, and I'll build that step to actually go on to the next one?
Yeah, I think what we're certainly trying to develop is the frameworks to do that and look to monitor the progress. We have some baselines, but actually we don't have some baselines at all. We don't even still have a fair number of the number of people in the country with disabilities. So there is still a lot of groundwork to even get the broader population understanding. But what we definitely have is a framework for looking at how we can make progress across some of those areas. So there's the individual games itself, which is it used to be in one way, I think, framed as the be all and end all, but actually I want to see it as a milestone on a much more sustainable path. And I think that's where we're really trying to get. So the milestone event for the individuals, it is their dream. It's the huge platform that we have every 4 years, and we need to make progress on that, in particular on the social impact side of that, which is the ripple effect of the profile of the athletes and their role modelling. So there's a few different, it probably would be a single quantitative number, I'm sorry to say, and I'm just going to be annoying in saying it's several, but also broadly, as I say, there's the individual piece, then there is the numbers coming through Next Gen, and that's where we very much work with like Sport Ireland, say with her moves to increase, ironically, while we're overrepresented with females on the senior team, we're underrepresented with females at a young age. So we have a lot of good groundwork to do there as well. So it'll be those kind of baselines and working with our partners. So Sport Ireland, Her Moves, working with our local sports partnerships or other disability sports bodies to actually figure out how do we tell the story of what's happening and how this is progressing. And we'll have numbers behind that, but I'm much more intrigued to get us to be better storytellers about it and be more innovative and creative around how we share that. Because again, we know the impact of those stories is what starts to change minds and perceptions, which is our end game. And then the final bit for us, again, around the impact for me, actually is something I got really quite interested in, is around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So, and actually the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee as well, has just released a really interesting strategy around impact strategy. Again, we know we can have an impact, but how can we have a better impact and have more reach and change more minds? That's the long-term goal of this. So actually, I think we attend to 9 out of the 17 goals as a Paralympic movement. And I think that's where we'd be really trying to get under the hood of understanding what that means. And again, we know that's really important in terms of commercial partners as well, that actually, again, we're using their leverage as much as ours to tell that wider story as well. So yeah, there'll be kind of 3 strands around. There's the Team Ireland bit at the Games, there's the platform, there's very much how are we working to bring more people into sport and have the entry points and the education to do that. And then that wider social impact, how are we using the athlete voice to help spread the word, but also how are we actually as an organisation and even nationally a level with a lot of our collaborators, our system partners, how are we really having a deep impact in terms of society and moving forward the Paralympic movement, really.
Okay, I will come back to that in a moment. I want to give the last word to you, Cliona. The next national level Next Gen event is taking place before Christmas, isn't it? What are the details of that, and how can somebody go to find out more about how they might become a part of it?
Yeah, the Allianz Next Gen is the last one of this year. It's on Sunday, November 30th. It's in the National Indoor Arena in Blanchardstown. And you can enter or register your interest in attending via our website, so paralympics.ie. And you can come and try a variety of sports on the day, meet some of our coaches, meet some athletes. So yeah, I hope to see anybody and everybody interested in para sports there on the day.
Okay. And if it's not you that's listening to this, then make sure that you can tell whoever it is that you think, because we want to spread the word on this. I think what para sport and Paralympics Ireland has done over the last 15 years has possibly been the sporting story of that period of time. How we have come from a point where we had literally 30 seconds of footage of Ellen Keane, I think it was, competing in a swimming pool in Beijing at the age of, she was probably 12 or something at the time, all the way through now to what you've been able to do in terms of both raising the expectation and the hope of a life in sport for people who have, an impairment. I think it's been fantastic. And thanks very much for coming along and sharing part of that story with us again today. We could do this every year on Sport for Social Good, because it really is that. It is the very essence of that. And thanks to Allianz for helping you to make those dreams for the next generation come true. Thank you very much. So the next element of our Sport for Social Goods conference this morning, in partnership with Allianz, is to look at the work of the local authorities and the local sports partnerships, a network funded by the government through Sport Ireland to deliver sport to areas that might otherwise get left to one side. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by two of the coordinators for two of the country's biggest local sports partnerships, Shane McArdle from Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown and Colin Sharkey from Dublin City Council, the Dublin Sport and Wellbeing Partnership, which, for the avoidance of doubt, I chair at the moment, but shortly to step down from that. Let me start off with you, Colin, if I may. That idea of the local authority, the local sports partnership having a responsibility to reach out into areas of our society that sport doesn't necessarily come as an easy pathway.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's our core belief that we need to do that. We need to be that authority, if you like, that contacts these people that are hard to reach, that may struggle in day-to-day life and need sport in their lives. And it is difficult and it is hard, but I think it's such something we're so proud that we're part of, and that we can have an effect on people and change their lives in some cases.
And it is the groups of people that, sometimes that society prefers to look the other way. So it might be those that are struggling with addiction. It might be those who are struggling with other, sort of social barriers that they haven't been able to overcome. I know the Sport Ireland research, which comes out on an annual basis, it always shows that the biggest gap lies between that sort of socio-economic attainment, so that if you're poor, you're much less likely to be invited by sport to participate. So how do you in Dublin City, how do you go about that? How do you reach those groups?
Well, we should be removing barriers for those people to be active. And I suppose that could be bringing people simply to an event in a van. They mightn't have access to transport. It could be providing them with free use of sports equipment through the Active Cities box-ups. And it's so varied and mixed, but it's just being there for them and providing them with simple things, and that might seem obvious and easy for us three to attain, but for people on low incomes or people, that everything is difficult. So we have to be there. We should be providing these classes, these facilities at a lower price and making them available for people to have a chance.
And Shane, out in the in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown, which again, an incredibly dense population. There's lots of sporting facilities that are there, but they are either commercial or they are sort of very organised and structured by clubs, and they do a great job on reaching 60%, 70% of the population. How does the local sports partnership in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown look beyond that, and where does your vision lie in terms of who it is that you actually want to bring into the net?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of clubs, there are a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of good work being done by volunteers all over the county and all over the country. But one of the challenges of the groups that we generally work with is they don't know that those opportunities are there. So the first challenge is the information and communication. So it might be, some people might think you put it up on Facebook or social media or your website, and sure, then it's out there. But in reality, the people we need to work with aren't on social media necessarily, don't know of our website and aren't aware of the opportunity. So to answer your question, it's been in the communities, or if not been there yourselves as a team, you have contacts and champions within it. So a lot of the work sports partnerships do is actually relationship building, building trust, and making the opportunities accessible and fun. The people, again, that we really want to work with are the ones who don't yet know that they should or they can be active. So that challenge of information and building the relationships with the communities, and then making sure that the opportunities are what they're looking for and appropriate for them. So when we come up with a new program or an event or an initiative, it's done with them. So it's not just us going, we think you'd love this, give it a go. What would you like to try? Where would you like to try it? What are your barriers? How can we take them down? And then find people within our own structures and stakeholders that'll help provide that. Because it's one of the things we do well as sports partnerships. We work with others all of the time. We never, when we're in a project, we would never just be delivering that on our own. We would deliver that with a number of stakeholders, the NGBs, community groups themselves, sports clubs, volunteers. It's a big web within that county. And our job is just to make sure that the people are sent in the right direction.
And that can be really challenging. You mentioned there about building relationships and trust. And I know that there are annual surveys that come out about how we trust organisations, but trust is really built on a person-to-person basis. Relationships are person-to-person as well. That's a very intense kind of a way that you're reaching into somebody who might be struggling with, drug addiction, or that in a community whereby, their home life is not as stable or as comfortable as many of us are fortunate to have. How does that responsibility kind of lie within? The local authority, it has many different faces, many different ways in which it serves the community. But sport and physical activity has to be one of those. How does it work on a one-to-one basis?
I'd start by saying the local authorities are very good at understanding that. So their job is to support that community where they're based. And it is difficult and it is resource intensive. So it can take time. It can mean that your project has to have small numbers to make sure that it is what they need it to be. And it might not work. So you need to be able to accept that sometimes, no matter what the best intentions were, it might not work. And it might mean that you go to plan B or Z or whatever it might be. But the first thing is to get the resources and the funding. The staff is important. The people that we work with, 100% of the time nearly, they're positive. They get the work. They love the work. And we're very lucky. We've constantly said within the network that we're lucky to have jobs where we enjoy, number one, and there's reward, and it's constantly different and busy because there's constantly need in the community. And since COVID in particular, that need has shifted and changed in ways, especially around health promotion and chronic conditions and people valuing what physical activity, not just sport, but being physically active can bring you. And the councils are finding that what we bring to the table and the resources that we can provide and deliver, it supports not just sport within that county. It's social inclusion, it's antisocial behaviour, it's bringing people together and being a very positive piece of what the local authorities do.
Having access to the infrastructure that exists all around us and having ownership of that in the public trust is really important as well. One of the things that I loved about what Dublin City Council did this year was the partnership with the Dublin Marathon and the instigation of the half marathon. So you give the streets of Dublin on behalf of all of us who live and work there, but in return, you had a reasonable number of places within that. How did you go about then building a program where something which was going to be a significant event that people would be aware of actually becomes something personal that people can aspire towards?
Well, we spoke to the locals, you know, through our rec centres and leisure centres and all the clubs that are surrounded the end of the race on the north side. And we got huge buy-in from them, and they just wanted to be involved, whether that be a volunteer or take part in the race. So it was just phenomenal to be involved with, you know, and they lit up the end of the street. The whole idea of it was going to be the locals race. You know, it's their race, you know, let them own it. Hopefully this will continue year in, year out, and it can get bigger and better. And it was just brilliant all the way through. And it was a good news story as well for Dublin City, and particularly the north side as well. So I was delighted to be involved with a really successful half marathon. No?
Yeah. And then in Dún Laoghaire as well, I mean, you've got the parks. So there's plenty of parks around. We're a good city in terms of creating space to breathe with trees and grass. Sport is only a part of what goes into those. And I know that those of us who are involved in sport and those of us involved in clubs, our initial reaction is that we just want to put pitches everywhere and we want to put facilities everywhere, which is possibly not in the overall social good that we're talking about today. But how does that work? How do you work with your parks department, for example, to say, bring forward ideas that will involve even the boxed sports facilities, the outdoor gyms that are popping up in various different places now? How well do you work with those other elements of the local authority to actually make sport as important as it is?
It is essential. So there's two layers to it. One is there's current parks and there's current facilities and what we currently have, and maximising what we get out of those. Because especially in Dublin, one of our big challenges is actually facilities and capacity, whether it's a GA club or a badminton club, it is a pinch point for clubs to be able to take in new members and find somewhere to play. But we would work with our parks department to maximise what we do have within public space and facilities. And we also work with the planning teams as well, especially now since Active Cities has kicked in, and we look at the system of delivering sport within a county. So it's very important that the clubs, the council, the volunteers, the participants all understand that a park isn't just for pitches. It isn't just for walking your dog. There's a lot of stakeholders. And I work within our parks department in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown, and you do see that tension of need and want a lot. And it's a fine balancing act because it's a very highly populated area and there's a lot of different interests. But it can work for everyone. So someone who wants to go for a stroll on a Saturday morning, who meets someone who's jogging in a park run, who then goes across and there's people playing football in the field, who then goes to watch people playing bocce. I think the Dublin parks have been very good at trying to be all things to all people. It's not easy, but it is necessary, because in an urban environment, it's that thing of, yes, you might have lots of things on your doorstep, but is it what you want? So a lot of people don't want to play team field sports. So that's where myself and Colin would kick in and the teams, just to try and make sure there's opportunities for whatever it is you want to do at whatever level. And in fairness to Sport Ireland, they're the ones who fund the local sports partnerships. And they've done a great job of supporting us to do that role and to reach the hard to reach.
I know Active Cities has fostered a real sense of collaboration and partnership between the four local authorities in Dublin, the two of you together with South Dublin and Fingal. Those of us who live in Dublin or maybe in Dún Laoghaire, we just consider, sure, listen, we live in Dublin and sure, it's the best city in the world. But obviously there are those four separate units. Does that sense of collaboration extend across the entire network? So every local sports partnership will have its own particular challenges and its own particular opportunities. But for the most part, I found through working across multiple sports, there's an awful lot more that unites us than divides us. So what is that level of collaboration like across the network?
I think the network is strong because we speak together. You know, when we meet up, we share experiences, issues that we all face the same issues, you know. And that shared experience, we get stronger together, I suppose. And Sport Ireland kind of garner us together, and we're more of a team, I suppose, if you want to use the sports terminology. But yeah, we just learn from each other. It's kind of simple as that, and I get loads of new ideas from Shane. He's been around the house a lot longer than me. I hope that won't. But that's the kind of network it is, and it's not competitive. We're all there to share ideas. And I think that Sport Ireland do a fantastic job of getting us together and educating us really on what's possible.
Do you work closely with the national governing bodies as well? So the sporting organisations themselves, if they've got a pot of money to activate within a particular, environment, whether it be, it might be in disability, it might be in social need. Will they approach you? Do you approach them? What way does the network operate in the wider sports side of it, Jen?
It does. It works both ways. So, for example, we had a really successful Sports Ability Day over in the campus about a month ago, and it only worked because we had the NGB support and their buy-in. And the challenge isn't with the bigger national governing bodies. They would have some staff and some resources. We, in particular, love working with the minority sports, the NGBs that might not have huge resources or reach, because that's giving you opportunities where it might not already exist. So some councils, luckily, will have joint funded officers with the NGBs, and there's a close relationship there and a work plan, and a lot gets delivered. But most of the time, it's actually relationships you have with officers from those NGBs. And they might send you an email, they might pick up the phone, we might do the same thing. It goes both ways. And the best thing we get from them is their skill set and their knowledge of their own sport. So they bring that ability to sell their sport in the best way possible. And our role in that is to put the individual who should and can and wants to play with the NGB who can provide that opportunity. And then that important bit of the club then. So across all the country, and back to the question you asked, Colin, we all work really well together because we want it to last. And the NGBs and the clubs are that way to go about it. Our job, get the people, give them the opportunity, and then feed them in, hopefully, to the club and the NGB, because that's where hopefully they're going to keep it going, find a social outlet and join the community.
Okay. Your approach is very much open arms and collaborative. Oftentimes sports clubs can be a little bit more inward looking. They might be elbows out with their neighbouring club or another sport that they think are coming along to take their children away. And yet you've both and every local authority has to build a good relationship with those clubs. How does that work? I mean, I know, Dunleary, you might have 400 sports clubs, same in Dublin City Council. That's a lot of relationships.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a huge amount of relationships, and it's difficult to stay on side with all those clubs. So, competing for pitches, etc., funding. I suppose it's we try and keep the links as strong as possible. That could be through our small grants scheme, where we're promoting inclusion and support financially. It could be through training and safeguarding. And then I think it's through speaking to them, keeping that open communication, seeing because sport evolves, things change, and it's that communication piece. I know in Dublin City Council, we're looking to promote a forum now of sports clubs around the different areas, get them involved, speaking to parks, speaking to the partnership, speaking to the staff within Dublin City Council to see how we can work together. And maybe it is a case where a Gaelic club and a football club need to share resources. And that will be an outlet, I suppose, for that piece that you're talking about. Trying to keep, it's impossible to keep everybody happy, but to try and bring clubs together, maybe, to pool resources.
Yeah. It's an important part of what you do as well, reaching out to new communities and IPAS centres. The people within our society that have the greatest need for community, but which can tend to be locked away behind a high fence. And we won't get into that, how our land of 100,000 welcomes can often be a lot less than that. But from a local authority point of view, that's a really important element of what you're doing, that you are reaching out with that welcome. Are there any success stories that either of you have seen over the course of the last couple of years that can paint a picture as to how we can be better at welcoming new people into our communities?
That's a tough challenge, and that's appeared, and it's one that we just need to do our best. And again, back to what I said earlier, listen to the people we're trying to look after. So what is it that they want? What is it that they need? It could be sports that isn't generally played within that area. Mm-hmm. And it might need long-term setting up a new club or new opportunities for that sport. But what we found actually, especially in where I am in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown, is a lot of the people staying within the iPath centres are transitionary. So they are coming from a difficult place and a difficult background. They're not necessarily thinking of being active as a top priority, even though it's probably the most important time that they do it. And then it's okay, how do we deliver on that? And even when you do deliver on it, they might have moved on to the next centre within the next couple of weeks. So it's an ongoing challenge. But what we did find is the local sports clubs are one of the big ways to try and manage that. And to a club, they have been excellent in being inclusive and opportunities, whether it's equipment that someone might need or not have, or just having an info session, or, bring a buddy. So they assign someone from the club to support a person who has, a language challenge or just a trust or confidence challenge. They're at least got a welcoming face that when they turn up at the club. It is a tough one, Rob, and it is an ongoing challenge, but the impact that giving these really hard to reach people an opportunity to be part of the community, it's priceless for that person.
Yeah.
It is.
And I think it's probably fair to say that somebody who's involved in a club, who is volunteering within sport, that their heart is in a good place anyway, that they will be more willing, and then you can provide them with the supports sometimes, and sometimes that can be the facilities. Like it is a benefit working with a local authority. So you do have gyms, and you do have halls, and you do have facilities, whether it be tracks or pitches or parks, that can be made available to the general public as well. Is that something which often people will come to you and they say, "Oh, well, you've got that big hall. Can we have that? Can we have that?" Is the demand almost impossible to satisfy?
It is at times, but I think we're always open to being fair to the community as a whole, and some people probably do need to be prioritised ahead of others, and obviously we do that in the most fair way possible. But yeah, look, it is a difficult question. We struggle to get access to our leisure centres sometimes ourselves. They're competing against making money and being that point for community. So it is a difficult one, getting away from it, as Shane has said. But I think just one story, if I may, we've a Ukrainian sports officer who's linked in with the local community, Ukraine community, and he set up a Box Fest event that happens every year. And it's that link that you were talking about, Shane, where children now are playing, or they're boxing for the clubs, the local clubs within Dublin City. And I just think that's an example of it kind of showing that it can work and it can lead to further participation within the sport.
And we're seeing more demand, as I mentioned, for sports. So, for example, only in the last month, we've helped to set up a new volleyball club, because that would be very well played within Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. And it's come about because the demand has increased, and we're doing our best to facilitate that. And then equally, we're seeing a lot more interest in cricket in the county. So parks are trying to tackle that whole thing of, well, if we set up a new club, where is it they're going to play? Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge we just mentioned. But generally, these challenges can be overcome. They're not problems. They're just, well, how do we get around this? Sports partnerships are quite good at trying to get around these things and being at the table to know what is possible.
I think it's the link you provide. We might get people around the table that initially, and then step away and let them have that conversation.
Yeah.
they're well-named organisations, so you are local. You do have the authority of being governmental, and you're working as partnerships as well, bringing the best of our communities together so that as a community we can be better for everybody who is a part of it. Well, listen, the very best of continued good luck in what you're doing, and the work that you do is hugely important for people whose voices are not necessarily those that are heard loudest and proudest of all. So thanks very much for doing that, to Shane and to Colin Dunleary in Dublin, representing the whole country. Thank you very much. Good meeting, Margaret.
Thanks, Rob.
So the final element of our Sport for Social Good conference this morning is a chat about a community initiative which has grown out of a commitment and a passion for well-being, and which is reaching out to people who might not otherwise have an opportunity to get involved in training within our parks and within our local areas. I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Crook, who is the creator, the founder, the inspiration behind Park HIT, double I, so
that's right.
High intensity interval training in the parks. It does what it says on the tin.
It does.
You wear a number of different hats as well, so you're very much committed and working in the space of well-being, wellness in the workplace. You've got a great newsletter if anybody needs to get a weekly dose of good stuff in that area. Do sign up, and you also running courses in Trinity College as well.
That's right.
But Park HIT, where did the idea come from in your mind that this was a good idea to bring to life?
Yeah, I've always had an interest in physical activity and physical well-being, and almost as a bit of a passion project about 10 years ago, I qualified as a fitness instructor, personal trainer, first of all for myself, because I wanted to just learn more about that and be able to kind of maybe run some initiatives myself locally and maybe introduce some into the workplace, which, as you said, is my main offering, if you like, workplace health promotion. But when I was studying, I always found it kind of interesting that I think if you asked most people, they'd probably be aware of the National Physical Activity Guidelines, around the 150 minutes per week that we should all be aiming for. And unfortunately, less than 50% of us in Ireland actually hit that target. But if you look at the WHO guidelines, and indeed the Healthy Ireland guidelines, which effectively promote the same, that's your cardiovascular target, and that's an incredibly important target. It's keeping us alive, your heart health. But in those very same guidelines, they also mention the importance of, well, we should also be getting 2 resistance sessions per week at a minimum also. And we're not bad at promoting the cardiovascular health and the sports and the activities related to that, and get out for a walk, get out for a run. Lots of really good initiatives in that space. But then I think when it comes to promoting resistance exercise, I just felt there was quite a bit of an imbalance there. There was nobody fighting for the resistance, if you like. So I said, well, that's something I'm interested in. I can see the real benefits in that space in terms of, your health span as you get older, not just your lifespan. Our bones, our muscles, our joints, and it can actually be really straightforward. There's no need to overcomplicate it. Arnie probably has a lot to answer for by overcomplicating things or looking like it was, you needed to be lifting really heavy weights in a gym. So I wanted to remove that intimidation barrier for one, but also then the financial barrier that some will face as well. So Park HIT now, it's free sessions. It's all free sessions.
Okay. And that is really important because, we live in a world where, you can get everything, but everything has a cost on it. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes this is quite a niche area. So it's easy for those of us. There is a pure democracy to the ability to go out and walk the streets or walk in a park. And we have a great city in which to do that. But when it comes to the more specific areas of those kind of training, like the resistance training, like going into a gym, that can be a little bit more challenging. So the idea behind Park HIT was to go into the parks and to do these courses free of charge.
Yes.
So how does the business element of that work? How does are you relying on volunteers to actually come and deliver the courses as well?
So Parkit is entirely volunteer led.
Okay.
And we have been since we started in January in 2018 in my local park in Ashtown. And I heard, I was listening to Colin and to Shane earlier, it was actually thanks to, in my local park in Ashtown, they installed these new outdoor exercise stations, if you like. But I noticed for the first year or so, no one was using them. I might pop down the odd time, get a nice outdoor workout, but nobody was using them. I don't know if they didn't feel like they knew how to or what the case may have been. So it was the first weekend in January in 2018. I remember it. I remember well. It was nice and cold. You know, the weather wasn't overly pleasant. But I just put up a post in the local Facebook group and I said, look, I'm going to go down to this exercise station that's there. I'm going to work out. I have a qualification in the space. Look, I might give a bit of guidance if anyone's up for it. We might make a bit of a community thing out of it. Let's see how we get on. So started out, you know, nice small numbers in those cold January mornings, but the numbers built up so much so that we actually couldn't really use the stations anymore because it was too many people. So I kind of had to think about, well, how can we do this that's a little bit more of a group session where everyone's doing the same workout. So that's really where the idea came from. And there was no business model behind it. Certainly back then, it was all about, I mean, I love the park run model. It was as simple as that, just to provide this free initiative initially. And look, if we ever get to that critical mass level, which we're moving nicely towards now, we can look at the sponsorship options. We can look at that. But certainly the ethos is that the workouts themselves will be free for local communities and always will be. That's a really important part of it.
Okay. So free to the end user, the person who has realized that they do need to get a little bit of resistance into their life. But it's never free, is it? I mean, you still have to be insured, I'm guessing. So is it Parkit has to carry the cost of insurance, and how does that work out?
Yeah, we do have an insurance cost, and shout out to Dublin City Sport and Wellbeing Partnership, who have provided us with sponsorship over the years, funding, if you like, over the years. But almost every year we kind of reach out to different organisations. It has been a funding model to date. It's been a kind of sponsorship model. It's been a funding model, and that has paid for the insurance. We're at a stage now. We're just about to launch our 8th location in Dublin. So it's been, you know, really nice, steady, slow, organic growth, natural growth, effectively coming up on 8 years, and it'll be an eighth location. Okay. But we've more than tested the model. The people in local communities are interested in this. They want a Parkit in their local park. So I think we're at the stage now where we need to professionalize what we're doing to move away from the solely volunteer-led model. Volunteers are going to be an important aspect of it to keep the workouts running. But our expansion plans are to hire a full-time CEO so that we can really grow to more and more parks. We want to get to at least 10 parks next year. We want to get to kind of more Dublin-wide in the year after that, and then nationwide after that. That's the plan. And we'd love to create more kind of opportunities, I guess, employment opportunities as we do that.
Okay. Does it need a license? Do you have to ask permission to actually sort of take up space in a park? Because you do see it every now and again where you've got, you know, at particular times of the year where you might get groups that will just decide, okay, I'm going to get a whole gang of people together now. We're going to do burpees and push-ups and we're just going to use that space of grass over there.
I know it's a funny one, and if you were to do that just randomly now with your group of friends, there's nothing stopping you. But yeah, to do it formally as we do, and we'd maybe advertise it locally in local groups, yes, you do need a license. And I do remember having some interesting conversations in the early days with the local authorities when I was trying to explain what we were doing. And because there's a standard, I think there is like a boot camp kind of template you might fill out, and there was a fee for all that. And I would say, well, is there something else we can do here? Because we don't charge attendees. Is there some kind of way we can work around this? So shout out again to Dublin City Council. We're very flexible with that. So we do have an agreement with them where we fill out a permit for the Dublin City Council parks. We also are OPW locations where there's a waiver signed and there's an agreement, and then there's a private land or two as well that we have agreements with. So yeah, absolutely, you do need to have that in place.
Okay, and your instructor that's guiding us through, well, I say us, guiding those that have taken to it so far. They're all fully qualified, and you run an annual kind of an induction course to bring new people on board.
That's right. So in the very early days of Park Hit, as we were kind of finding our feet, and I was trying to figure out how can we grow this? How can we grow this to more and more parks? We did start with only fully qualified fitness professionals with their own insurance. So that was important. But as we kind of found out, that was a bit of a barrier to growth. First of all, there isn't a huge amount of qualified fitness professionals out there with their own insurance. And secondly, they're probably pretty busy on a Saturday and on a Sunday morning when we do our workouts. So it is very hard to get that consistency every single weekend. So we devised our own training program for leaders. So it's for regular attendees who know their burpee from their squat. They go through a training program with us. And there's 5 workouts at Park Hit that rotate each week. So as we see, Park Hit is not a class, it's a group exercise session. So a little bit like if you're going to park run, you're not going to get any running coaching. You're going to get someone who's managing the time, who's managing the ground, making sure it's a safe space to work out, and who's giving direction on each exercise. So that is what our leaders are qualified in. And as it turns out, it's maybe a nice little stepping stone for anyone who would like to go on to become a fitness professional. But that is that's effectively what we insure our leaders on. And we run that once a year, the in-person training. There's an online element to it as well. We do also have an option for those that want to join during the year. They want to volunteer out of cycle, if you like. They can shadow one of our leaders for the 5 sessions and do the online stuff. They have an onboarding session as well, and they can join that way.
Okay, so we're in 8 parks now, 8 different locations. And is that every weekend, every Saturday morning?
Every single weekend, and we like to say we take our time starting in the park, because when we start in the park, we stay in the park. And it's the same time every week, so there's no confusion around the timing. So every 5 of our current locations, well, it will be 6 soon, will be on a Saturday morning, and we've 2 on a Sunday then as well. And we love park run, so we're in a couple of locations where there is a park run, so we make sure not to clash. We actually go at 8:45, so eager beavers can do the double header if they wish.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many are you reaching out to at the moment?
How many people?
Yeah.
It'll depend on the location, but it wouldn't be like the park run numbers now. We'll say that. First of all, our insurance, we're limited to 25 people for every single session. And it's probably only at, say, Phoenix Park and St. Anne's Park that really hit those numbers regularly. And Phoenix Park will be that every single weekend. But at a minimum, you're talking, are we getting 10 to 20 people at a location? So it's a really nice workout. It's a safe space. As you were kind of saying earlier, like there's nothing stopping anyone getting out for a walk or a run or whatever it might be in their local park. But how often would you see someone going out on their own and doing squats on their own, or doing some push-ups on their own, or holding a plank in a park on their own as part of a circuit? It's extremely unlikely. It's quite rare. So we're giving everyone that safe space. There's someone in the middle calling out the next workout. It's timed. It's quite short. It's a 5-minute warm-up. There's 20 minutes of that intensity, and I say a reasonably high intensity, and then there's a 5-minute warm down. So it's a half an hour and you're done.
Okay. And it's all, your own body is the resistance and the ground and the air, but you're not bringing dumbbells, you're not having to set or bracks or anything like that.
It's BYOB, Rob. Bring your own body weight, as we like to say, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And bringing that back into the day job and, and both coaching and lecturing and encouraging people to look at well-being in the workplace. Are there lessons that you've learned from the experience of bringing something which is very real to real people in real environments that you've been able to bring back into the theory of what well-being is all about and some of those lessons?
Well, so interestingly, there was an Oxford University study was it last year or the year before, that actually found when workplace interventions were targeted only at the individual level, there was little to no benefit for those involved, apart from only one particular intervention, which was volunteering. So it's something that fits in really nicely with what we do at Park Hit. Everybody involved is a volunteer. So we've 40 plus volunteers now at the moment, 40 active volunteers. So that fits in very nicely. Something else that fits in very nicely is the when we talk about well-being on the postgrad at Trinity, at a foundational level, we look at what the WHO promoted in their 1948 constitution around the pillars of well-being, which are physical, mental and social well-being. And at Parkit, if you think about it, I guess the hook to get people in is the physical activity, the physical well-being. But all of our workouts are outdoors, in local parks. So we're getting everybody outdoors on a Saturday or Sunday morning. It's really good for your mental well-being. You're meeting people in your local neighbourhood. And to be honest, I would say quite a few of our locations, it's more about this social connection and the coffee afterwards, the coffee and the porridge afterwards, which can be a big draw for many. So we like to think with Parkit, it's the physical, it's the mental well-being, and it's the social well-being aspect as well. It's the physical hook that gets you in, but it's the social connection that keeps people coming back.
Okay. And they do keep coming back. So there is a really consistent level of the same people turning up time and again because of the community that you built.
There really is. There's a hardcore crew, regardless of the weather. I know we were chatting about this earlier. The weather in Ireland gets a bit of a bad rap. Yeah. Parkit is 52 weekends of the year. If it falls on Christmas Day, it falls on Christmas Day. That's the way it works. And we've had actually some lovely workouts on Christmas week. But yeah, usually the weather is pretty good in Ireland. So if people wear appropriate clothing, but yeah, we have this hardcore group that never miss a session, And then the really nice thing is there's always at least one or two new people every single week as well. So it's like you're adding to the numbers, and obviously people can't make every single week. So it's just a really nice crew that's developing at each location.
Okay. There is something very special about a social enterprise which has grown out of wanting to do good and delivering a service to people that would not otherwise get it. You're a classic of the genre, and the very best of luck in doing that, because it is that that physical, mental, social well-being, and you're ticking each and every one of those boxes. So long may it continue, spreading from Dublin all around the country, and who knows, maybe the world next. But thanks a million for taking the time to share the story with us this morning, Brian Cook.
Thank you so much, Rob. Pleasure.